Union is saved. The war is over. Freedom for the South!
What inspired the show is that I stumbled across the figure of Edwin Stanton, who was Lincoln's Secretary of War. And I also came across the story that the night of the Lincoln assassination was not just him being shot by John Wilkes Booth, but that there was an attack on other members of the cabinet, which I never learned in school, and I was really surprised to find out. And so the combination of that and finding this figure who essentially was president for 12 hours without being recognized as being president really fascinated me, and so I went on a journey from there.
You say you went to the United States and you didn't know what happened. I grew up in Ireland, so my whole idea of what that was came from The Simpsons. You know, there's this scene where Bart is playing John Wilkes Booth and he shoots Lincoln, and he says, "Hasta la vista, baby." So that was my introduction. What was your question?
What kept him going?
What kept him going?
Well, he had a really strong belief in himself.
Narcissism, hate, just a lot of negative emotion, like a lot of anger as a thing to pace him, as a thing to drive him forward.
He's a very angry young man.
He's a very angry young man. A lot of hate in his body, a lot of hate in his soul. He's an asshole.
And you also had to play him with a broken leg.
I did, yeah.
So what was that like, sort of dragging yourself around the...
Yeah, it was all right, man. I put a brace on my leg to sort of, to help with that. It was good, we got flashbacks, so we got the opportunity to see Booth at his full power, at his full sort of, chest pumped, this sort of egomaniac walking around, swanning around the place. And then we got to see him, legs broken, vulnerability. So it was a lot of scope that we got to see Booth. So it was a lot of fun to play both those extremes.
I did as much as I could as quickly as possible, and I had this beautiful team of makeup artists, beautiful voice coach. I had wonderful Monica and Carl Franklin telling me the Lincoln that they were looking for, and just try to fit in. I mean, yeah, there's no recordings of him, and you can't always trust what people wrote at the time, because they might have not been fans of his and saying he was a squeaky boy. But it's nice, you get up in that nasal register and you can be heard pretty far away if you use it right.
Well, Mudd was in Maryland, and there was tremendous support for the Confederacy in Maryland, and Lincoln wisely seized the whole state at midnight and said, "Oh, guess what? You're part of the Union now." So he never quit on the cause. He was always helping Southerners. He was always trying to run money, hiding people on their own version of an underground railroad from Montreal to the Charleston capital. So he was dirty, and I think it was because there is so much source material to study, and the setup of going to Savannah and having beautifully lit, everyone's in full period garb, you're sweating and you feel like, oh my God, it's the Civil War again. It was quite easy to interact and get into it, so. But yeah, Mudd was dirty, totally.
It was an honor to tell a story that hasn't been told that much throughout history with the oppressed. Oppression itself is very, universal. It looks the same, or the effects of it looks the same on the oppressed people. So playing that, I did have to fall into a more subservient kind of element or characteristic part of myself, because I'm so used to playing power characters. So this one was way more quiet, way more in her head thinking, so it was a lot more just internal world buildup, because that's the only world that she could exist freely within, and not in the outside world because of all of, Dr. Mudd and Booth and all of the things that they believed in, so, yeah. I think at that moment for Mary Sims, just the idea of freedom itself is just a burden because it's not a part of everyone else in the world's life according to, just skin color. So just the idea of freedom itself just being this big thing that you're working up towards, just being ripped away from you is just really heartbreaking. And it was nice to see that Mary did have a moment of that, because it is like a whole life of just being oppressed and being a slave and being of service to other people. You do want to find the time when you do come into yourself, like, oh, how am I being of service to me and not just a vessel for this person, that person. So I do think I'm happy that it happened for her, even if it was a brief moment.
I think, we kind of Frankensteined him through what we could find throughout history, and definitely some of the mini-me aspects of him. I definitely watched Tobias closely just to sort of mimic some of his behaviors and sort of his intonations vocally, and keep that in the frame of the story that we were telling. But I think ultimately the journey is how he deviates from that as well, and sort of how he comes into his own, which I think was like emulating a larger story throughout the 7 episodes.